I believe marketing should influence 100% of the pipeline all the time. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing marketing correctly to begin with.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Laumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with CTech. Marketing is crucial, and today I'm going to learn just how much. Meet Kyle Lacy, Chief Marketing Officer of Lessonly. Kyle brings over 14 years of experience in marketing with a slice of revenue. He's currently Chief Marketing Officer at Lessonly, and prior to joining Lessonly, Kyle held senior positions at OpenView, Salesforce, and ExactTarget. He is also the author of 3 books, Twitter Marketing for Dummies, Branding Yourself, and Social CRM for Dummies. He wears monotone, loves history, and hates onions. Meet Kyle. Kyle Lacy, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I think this might be the first time that I get a chance to speak to somebody who held the title of Chief Mario Officer. So now it's a Chief Marketing Officer at Lessonly. But your journey spans well beyond just marketing, with various different organizations that you've been a part of, including Salesforce, including quite a few years in venture capital. And now you're building an amazing team within Lessonly. You've seen the team grow just within the marketing from 10 to 40. You mentioned the company from 50 to 250. And you know, I'm excited to pick your brain both on your experience within Lessonly, but also how that draws to a greater trend and pattern within, you know, the high-tech ecosystem and specifically the marketing domain. And so before we get to all of that, Kyle, who are you in essence? You've done so many different things throughout your career. How would you define your own career in your eyes?
I mean, fundamentally, I'm a marketer for sure. And I just happen to go from being a brand marketer to being a brand marketer that is measured on revenue. And that's something that I talk about quite a bit on why marketing should be comped off revenue creation instead of it just being like a pipeline influence. But for me, I'd say it's a creative marketing that drives revenue is kind of where I focus as a leader.
Now, what is the alternative that you mentioned? So marketing for brand, and how do you actually, you know, measure that, and why are those two things, you know, alternatives to each other?
I think a lot of times in my past lives, I've seen marketing teams that go off of an influence number. Like we did X amount of activities and we influenced X amount of revenue or pipeline, meaning that there was a touch point at some point in the sales cycle that marketing was a part of. At Lessonly, it's more around direct sourcing meetings that then lead to revenue. And it's not necessarily, like, I believe marketing should influence 100% of the pipeline all the time. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing marketing correctly to begin with. So for us, it's pipeline generated and revenue generated. And that's how the teams are measured. And it actually helps with alignment on sales because sales and marketing own the same number.
So talk to me a little bit about Lessonly, both what the company does, but then how the organization is structured to do exactly what you just mentioned, which is the marketing towards revenue.
Yeah, so Lessonly's training and enablement software for sales and customer service teams, headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. Like you said, about 250 employees. You know, more remote now than we were before the pandemic, of course. But you know, Lessonly's structured a little bit differently than most orgs. Our revenue teams are services, CX, marketing, and sales. Those teams are responsible for generating revenue. But what's interesting is that we have what's called a revenue effectiveness team and a revenue ops team that lives in they're basically the hub of the go-to-market model for Lessonly. So all of the information that all the teams need to know and all the data that all the revenue teams need to know are centralized in one place. So it has allowed us as a company to scale appropriately because we have centralized our funnel, our definitions, our enablement. Like if a persona changes, it's really easy to enable everybody. And product marketing also lives in revenue effectiveness. It doesn't live in marketing. The other thing is that all of our outbound BDRs and SDRs live in marketing. So it actually encourages alignment between sales and marketing because a lot of the meetings that the AEs need in order to hit quota come from marketing. So you have to
Right.
work closely together or it doesn't work.
Now, when we're talking about this, and I understand this is different than most companies. This is different than most organizational structures and companies. But why is that? Because what you're telling me sounds very convincing, and soon we're also going to raise the question of B2B versus B2C and the strategy behind that. But why is Lessonly different, and why do you have this strong conviction that this is the right thing for you?
I mean, we just kind of do what we feel is right in the org structure, and there's not really, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a playbook that we're following. It's whatever feels like the correct thing to do, and not like going back and saying, oh, what did X amount of companies do out of our portfolio or whatever. For us, it's what makes the most sense with the current team that we have, and what helps us grow faster.
Right. And so B2B should copy B2C. When you think through that statement, what does that actually mean, tangibly? That's a pretty loaded statement.
Well, yeah, outside of just consumer marketing is more creative and better. I mean, we could talk all day long, and I'd be interested in what you think about this from the engineering side, but I don't ever think features are a competitive advantage. You launch a feature, it's going to get built by your competitors. It doesn't matter. The only thing that's a competitive advantage is brand and experience, right? And so the best marketers at brand and experience are consumer marketers, because they have to be, because there's too many choices. Like the marketing lead for Burger King has, like, the total addressable market for Burger King and all the competitors is freaking ridiculous. Like it's terrible. And so you have to be so experience driven in order to win. And I think that the software companies that have won markets are the ones that have understood that you've got to build a great product, but your experience has to be better than the competition. And that includes brand, that includes pre-sales, it includes post-sales, like the entire journey. And I just think consumer marketers are better at it.
And so, if as a young entrepreneur, let's say that myself and my friends want to enter into a B2B SaaS company, right? We want to start something of that sort, and we have to think strategically through, where we're putting our eggs and where we're, investing our time and effort. And so, when you think through, that rationale, what is it actually? What are the implications for that for a young entrepreneur that is now starting their journey?
I think that one of the larger mistakes that entrepreneurs make is they don't hire a great designer up front. And that could be a graphic designer for your go-to-market strategy, or it could be UX UI. You got to get that right first, in my opinion. So, I also think hiring product marketer early, there's a couple roles that I think you should hire early: product marketing, enablement, and a great designer. And it's really dependent on the product. It depends on are you product led? Are you sales led? I still think what's interesting about having a great designer is that it doesn't matter if you're a product led or sales led model. You still have to have great design, in my opinion. The companies that I think are going to win, like the Wherebys of the world, right, that are competing with Zoom, if you look at their design, it is just immaculate, and they got that right at the beginning. It was, so I just think that hiring a great designer pays back tenfold if you do it correctly.
Right. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I've been wondering for quite some time, when I'm looking at a lot of early stage startups, why they're choosing to have, 7, 8 people in their R&D team, from the get-go, without product marketing, without any designing figure. When at the end, the messaging is just as important as the technology itself. If you don't have, if you don't explain the product well, then nobody's gonna want to use your product, and there's always the anomalies. But to me, it makes perfect sense. Now, Kyle, from you've come into this role, and I'll take the role of Chief Mario Officer because it's more fun to say. You've entered Lessonly, both at a really interesting time where Lessonly is obviously growing tremendously, and you're building the strategy behind the marketing, and you're watching it grow. You're bringing with you a lot of experience. I'd love for you to touch on some parts of your career and the different experiences, whether they be in venture capital, in Salesforce, and in the different organizations. What do you take with you now that you look back? Maybe you didn't do marketing before, but now you're saying, wow, like I'm really glad I had this experience because it taught me something.
Being an entrepreneur before I joined like ExactTarget, which was my first software role, I had to learn the balance between ego and empathy, and that especially was important for me at ExactTarget because it was the first team that I built that was pretty high growth. I mean, we had a content marketing team of I think 15 people. So, and then I learned even deeper at Lessonly. How do you check your ego? How do you make sure you're being proactive as much as possible and aggressive, but also empathetic to the needs of the team, and also empathetic to the needs of, are they balancing time appropriately, mental health, like, so if there's anything for entrepreneurs and VCs and people who are investing in high growth startups to think about, it's how do you make sure you're scaling and doing hyper growth without just killing people? I mean, and I think that is a really, really hard thing to balance. And it's something over the course of my career I've had to learn, especially last year, 2020, where, we had the majority of people in one office and then everybody went remote. And you have to, like, I had 30 plus people, and you had to understand where each of them were at from a mental standpoint, just because of everything happening, of course, in outside just the pandemic, everything happening in the United States, right? So that's probably it. The other thing is making sure you understand when an inflection point in your career is happening. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs are better at understanding this, but people who are working at startups, you get antsy and you want to leave because you see better opportunities, but you need to understand when you are just getting bored and you need to be challenged, or you're ready to leave. It's very, very important because if you decide that every time you're bored, you're going to leave a company, you're never going to get the experience that you need when it comes to failing, when it comes to being challenged, when it comes to being stressed, like all the stuff that you learn if you stick through it. I see a lot of times people just don't stick through it. They see the next great opportunity and they go do it, and they don't understand that where you excel and where you will find that next big thing is when you fail and you're challenged.
Right. Marketing leadership. One of the things that I love talking most here is about this leadership and this idea that leadership comes into play in different domains and different stages, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about what it means to be a leader in the marketing domain. So growing the team to now 40, right? And what does that actually mean for you? What do you have to do in order to do that from 10 to 40, whether it means an aligning of the vision? You're talking about, the pandemic and everything that happened in the US, and all of a sudden, if before you were guiding the vision of the marketing, now you're also guiding people. How does that balance out?
So when I first joined Lessonly, about half my time was tactical. Like I was doing like very granular doing stuff. Now it's about making sure that everybody is taken care of. And I'm looking 12 to 18 months in advance. My team's looking, 3 to 6 months in advance. But I don't do anything tactical anymore, really. I mean, other than like high level projects, exec team projects that we're sponsoring, for me, it's making sure my team has what they need to do what they love, and making sure people are aligned. I mean, that's it. Before, with 10 people all in one office, you just looked at people and talked to them. But
You
now,
sit at lunch.
like, especially as we start, and as we start going more global and we start thinking about what happens when we go to APAC or UK or South America, like it's more strategy than it is anything else. So it's taking care of the team, making sure they have what they need in order to do what they love, not just to do crap every day. And then, I do a lot of meetings. I sit in a lot of meetings.
So, obviously, we want to have a handle on the people we manage, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity that I'll have hopefully one day doing the same thing. But when it comes to reality, it's not as easy. It's not as trivial, and people don't necessarily, especially remote, they don't necessarily want to come out and say, "I'm not feeling good," right? And so there's a lot of different things that pull you in different directions. How do you then, hold either yourself accountable or, the organization accountable for making sure that you do have that strong grasp? Because I think that's really it's not a trivial thing to do.
Yeah, so from a company standpoint, we have a quarterly survey that's anonymous that goes out. So we have a good 2 or 3 years of data to see like where the mental mindset is. From a marketing perspective, the best thing, two best things that I've done, I am very open with my team on when I am depressed, when I'm not happy, when I need to give them space. When you're a leader and you can say, guys, I'm taking half day because I'm just not in a good spot, they feel like they have the ability to do that. And the other one is every quarter I meet with each team member for 30 minutes. Now, that was easier with 10 people. Now with 43, 45 people, that's hard. However, it gives them the ability to connect with me and ask questions and make sure that I understand where they think there's opportunities for improvement. And that, sometimes that gleans information, but with all three of those things, it works pretty well.
Did your over 4 years in venture capital, what impact did it have on the rest of your trajectory? Whether it's the ability to see things more broadly or horizontally, or diving deep and giving feedback. What was that experience like for you?
Venture capital for me was getting a master's in software, like actually truly understanding what it takes to grow a company. Because when I joined ExactTarget, we hired 500 people that year. Like there wasn't like a primer on growth. This was a rocket ship already. The other thing is network. Like the best going to OpenView was an amazing decision, not just because me understanding software, but I grew my network pretty exponentially, and it has been a huge influence in my career after. So those are the two things, the most important things.
Amazing. Kyle, I really want to thank you for coming in, and I appreciate the honesty and the transparency. And I have a few questions, not about marketing or about Lessonly, but I have a few questions about Kyle, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
And we'll go back all the way to middle school or high school. I'm curious to know what's your favorite subject from during that time?
History, military history. I'm obsessed with Civil War and World War II, World War I, geopolitics in those time frames. And
Why military history?
When I was little, every time we went to rent VHS tapes from the grocery store, I always got the movie Gettysburg. So from 6 years old on, I was constantly watching this terrible movie called Gettysburg about the Battle of Gettysburg and the Civil War. And since then, I'm obsessed with history in general. I think it's amazing to read about, but I prefer more the geopolitical stuff that has to do with not as much as Civil War, but definitely World War II.
Wow. And who would serve as a role model of yours, or somebody that inspires you in some way, shape, or form?
Scott Dorsey Scott Dorsey was CEO of ExactTarget. He's on the board at Lessonly. Pretty much every career decision I've made since 2012 has to do with him. So
really,
yeah. So there's a really long story that has to do with that. He helped me out when he shouldn't. Like I was a 25-year-old kid and he took the time to help me. And since then, it's just, I'm trying to pay him back for that over the last, 12 years, 14 years. So yeah, he's it. The way that he leads, the way that he invests in his community, he's just a great human being.
Amazing. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
I'd say empathetic, proactive, and this kind of contradicts, but I'm pretty proactive and aggressive, but I'm also laid back. So I'm not as
I
crazy.
find the contradictions are always the best. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you are. I really appreciate it. And stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you.